Through more than 2 decades at Kenner and Hasbro, Aaron built worlds, told stories, and designed toys for some of pop culture's biggest names, including Transformers, Batman, Star Wars, and more. Join him as he explores the archives and tells you the stories of the creative process behind your favorite toys. This is the Toy Armada with your host, Aaron Archer.
So we're back again for another Toy Armada with Aaron Archer, and I'm your host, Protoman. And we're going to be talking about today a much requested topic. And I really feel deep down it's probably going to be one of the very first times that it's really been addressed publicly on the internet in this kind of context. And it's that of what really was Transformers Transtech from Hasbro back in that weird early 2000 bubble. What it was, it's so confusing just to get into it because of how little we knew as fans. But it doesn't matter what we know as fans because we got the man himself again today with us. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm well. Hope everybody's doing well.
So Aaron was in the trenches at Hasbro during Transtech, during all of that, and we're going to paint the picture. We're going to create the story of leading up to Transtech, what it was, the people behind it, and ultimately in the end, what was created, what wasn't created, why it didn't happen, and all the little inside baseball in relation to that. So let's do that, shall we? So just to create a little bit of a background, so the year is November 18th, 2000. Beast Machines has just finished its final episode of its show on Fox. It was called Endgame Part 3, The Seeds of the Future. It just had finished its run as a cartoon, Season 2 on Fox. Around that same time, on the other side of the globe in Japan, Car Robots was playing in Japan, and they were on episode 32 of 39 episodes of how they do things of their show. So we had Beast Machines, they had Car Robots in Japanese, and they were getting close to the end of their show. They weren't very far away. Car Robots would actually end on December 27th in 2000. So literally next month, Car Robots would be done. So these were two brands, one on the Japanese side, one on the American side, that were both coming to their conclusions. And we were going to be going into the year 2001. Now, it's something where was Hasbro going to be going after Beast Machines? Now, we saw that they had plans in 2000. They were going to do the Battle for the Allspark, that sub-imprint of the Beast Machines line, where it was going to be more toys, and they were going to have that Dinobots imprint. They were going to continue some more of those characters. So just to give some fans, hardcore fans, so like the Battle of the Allspark, Battle for the Spark, Beast Machines line, where characters like Hammer Strike or Tank Drone or Spy Streak or the Battle Unicorn, everyone remembers that one. The Beast Changer character, which was Savage Noble, Night Slash Cheetor, the Blast Punch Optimus Prime, and of course Magmatron, let's say, from the Dinobots. All of those were products that came out in 2001 in a world where Beast Machines now didn't have a show anymore. Show had concluded at that point. And Japan didn't have a show either at that time because Car Robots had concluded. So it is the year 2001 in a post-Beast Machines fiction world. There is some new product that's coming out here and there, but that's all we have at this point. Now let's go all the way to Rhode Island. We're here with Aaron today. It's not in Rhode Island, but we're in that Rhode Island atmosphere. What is happening at that point?
Well, we're actually in Cincinnati.
Okay, we're in Kenner still, are we?
So, yep. Okay. So, in toy lines, at least at Hasbro, and especially a toy line like Transformers, where not only are you planning for success, but you're certainly planning for continuation, because Transformers will never go away, right? So, they were planning on Beast Machines doing what it was going to do, and following up what was going to be the follow-up to that. That was being developed in Cincinnati with the team that kind of developed shows at that time. Kevin Maurer, Chris Woods was on that team as a designer. His art is also out there. And then the Transformers team proper with Takara a little bit about what types of features and ideas they wanted to bring to this next segment of Transformers. May not even been called Transtech quite at the beginning. So you plan for success, you plan for the sequel, and that means you're doing pre-development. So in the case of what is going to be called Transtech, Draxel Jump Ken Lashley did a lot of concept design. So did Chris Woods, internally. And between those two, there was a style established. A bit of a... let me take a half step back. All of this would have been developed in Kenner, Hasbro, in Cincinnati, so that when it went to Mainframe, it was delivered to Mainframe. So this stuff would have been all still held mostly internally, so that management approved of everything. Takara costing was going to be figured out, and then it would have been transitioned to, assuming Mainframe, to then know exactly what they were dealing with, maybe have actual scans of models, things like that. Unlike a normal animation partnership where maybe they would be involved earlier in story and character design, certainly. When we worked with Mainframe, Hasbro, Kenner led the character design. So that's why they wouldn't... So all that is to say there's not really a Transtech story Bible or first script or pilot idea, or there's very loose story content out there on Transtech because Mainframe really wasn't connected yet. This was all done internally with Takara and at the Kenner office in Cincinnati.
So you mentioned Mainframe quickly. Like you said, we'll take a step back. So Draxel Jump, their involvement also is in Beast Machines. That's kind of like, sure. I guess that's where they got their connection with Kenner, Hasbro, and everything, and why they also were involved with this Transtech, I guess we'll call it pre-production stuff. And you mentioned Mainframe. Were they just kind of like a given understanding? It's just like, well, we did Beast Wars, it was success. We did Beast Machines, not so much, but it's kind of expected, well, whatever we're going to do next, I guess it's going to be Mainframe again. Like, was that kind of that frame of thinking, or was it also a possibility that maybe they might go elsewhere? Like, what was that relationship with Mainframe Entertainment, now known as Rainmaker?
My impression was that it likely would have continued with them, or that was just the plan. Sometimes that's how these things go. Mm-hmm. But I got to admit, I wasn't the lead on this or directly involved, so there could be a level of detail there I'm just unaware of. Mm. But I'm pretty sure it was being developed for that same process that we had been using for Beast Wars through Beast Machines.
Yep. And Draxel Jump, like you mentioned, also their involvement with Beast Machines and I guess they were brought on for Transtech because they wanted to continue that aesthetic that they were already doing previously.
Yeah, the powers that be at the time really liked that aesthetic that Draxel brought into the characters, and often it was an art style choice. So they really dug how they interpreted robots, and so they were kind of brought in to visualize a ton of the ideas on the table. This is probably the best way to say it.
To bring the characters to life. So yeah. When we start discussing, so you mentioned before, the character designs are made first, like what we've talked about with, let's say, something like Armada, where characters are kind of designed first, and then they get a feel for what the overall aesthetic's going to be. Like, what would have been the process? It would have been character designs first, then if there's a play pattern gimmick or something in that toyetic world, and then story? Like, walk me through that.
Yeah, so it would have been pitched still as getting closer and closer to vehicles, right? So Beast Machines was a partial step towards vehicles. The whole concept that some of the leaders had at the time was that we are slowly marching towards real trucks, real cars, real planes again. And they were doing this in year by year drips and drabs at this point. So Beast Machines had a little more of that, right? Wheeled vehicles, jets, things like that.
A whole half of the line was vehicles, as opposed to just the previous line was. If anything, we saw that transition because it was Beast Wars was beasts. Then we get to the Transmetals. It's beasts with a vehicle flavor to them. You know, oh, there's jets on this. This rat has a car kind of mode. By the time we get to Beast Machines, now 50% of the line, the bad guys, are Vehicons, they're vehicles. And then when we get to Transtech here, even characters that have always been associated with animals, like a Cheetor, now turns into a vehicle. So we get to a point where we have now a fusion of the two, but it still leans more vehicular than anything.
Yeah, so this was going to be the closest attempt at the time to getting back to full vehicles, even if they had a beast pedigree, to your point on Cheetor.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of equity in those names, you know, that they had been built up since Beast Wars, so that was, you know, a reason why we would have done that also. Why make a cheetah something else? But trying to think of how to approach this. So overall, there was a goal of getting back to vehicles. I don't know what the over story was. They liked the Draxel design language. A lot of it was being developed internally. And they worked with Takara to the point where I know they made a Cheetor and a Starscream model.
Yep. Two pros.
And they both lit up. So
they both had electronics.
Yeah, the underwriting feature that I remember was something they would have built into the show, which is some sort of inner power or inner energon glow, right? That's what the toy would have given you.
From what we've seen, because Big Bad Toy Store had, we don't know the validity of this, but they had early listings of what potentially might have been the first wave. And part of that was a mention that the Ultra class and the Mega class would have electronics. Now, it doesn't mean electronics and sounds or just sounds, just some kind of electronics. And if you also base it off of Draxal Jump's art style, now it could be just the art style, there is kind of a glowing hue to these characters. It might be just the choice of the style, but when you look at joints and stuff like that, there is a concentrated choice to have a very strong alternative color. And when you look at, let's say, that Starscream prototype, a lot of clear plastics on it, which would have meant for the piping of light into those clear plastic areas, the legs, the shoulders, the arms, and then, of course, into the vehicle mode. So there's clearly some kind of concentrated effort to do that. So that probably would have been the gimmick, if anything, is some kind of glowing whatever, energon, spark power, whatever you want to label it.
Yeah, and at the time, that would have been perceived as a new feature for Transformers. It hadn't really been done in Beast Wars much, or even going back very often. So that would have been perceived as a cool new feature, right, for Transformers.
If you want, we'll kind of like go through it since we already mentioned it. So Big Bad Toy Store, in December of 2000, 1 month after Beast Machines had ended the TV series but had not released the Battle of the Spark toys yet, put up a bunch of pre-order listings for a whole bunch of, obviously, Beast Machines products, Battle Unicorn and all of those. But along with those listings, they also listed Transtech product. Wave 1 to ship in early 2001, Deluxe Class, Cheetor, Silverbolt, Starscream and Shockwave, Mega Class, 2 figures, no name given right now, Electronics, and Ultra Class, Optimus Prime and or Immorticon and Megatron Electronics. So those were what was perceived would have been the first wave. if you will. And that probably would have also tied into whatever fiction and stuff, so you could let your mind race in that direction. But that's what originally was put out there from Big Bad Toy Store. Again, keep in mind, I'm going to say this again, this is what Big Bad Toy Store put out. The validity of this is, Big Bad Toy Store has had a good relationship with Hasbro, so I would like to believe that whatever they're listing here is credible, and not to mention the other stuff that they listed at that exact same time would actually become Beast Machine's product later on. Blast Punch Optimus Primal, the Tank Drone, the Night Slash Cheetor, the Battle Unicorn, etc., etc. So we could take this as legitimate, I believe. What is your take?
I think those were the items that they were working toward. Those are characters that have been drawn up, some of the models I've seen. So that tracks to me as accurate. If I'm looking at this from a toy person, these things would have had to have been designed in the year 2000, maybe even started in the late 99. And they were going to let Beast Machines play out. The last Beast Machines product, even if Beast Machines found success, was coming out in the mid 2002 was probably the latest stuff. Battle Unicorn and then that stuff.
It was essentially after the show ended in late 2000, 2001 for a bulk of it was just finishing off Beast Machine's product that you guys had already planned. Like Striko was part of that.
Slapper, some of that stuff.
Well, there was also some product that was canceled off of Beast Machines and then turned into Robots in Disguise product.
That's true too. So I get a little confused in that time frame because I was being responsible for making decisions about some projects being just enough along that they're going to survive, and other ones being enough along that they weren't enough along that they weren't going to survive. So I get a little, unfortunately for me, like where they end up at the end in RID package or Universe package or Beast Machines package, I get a little fuzzy because I was just dealing with all these parts. Like, we got the tooling for Battle Unicorn. We have to use it. What are we going to do? Well, okay, Cerberus, the dog, was a big one, right? Because it just kind of didn't make any sense at that point. But there the model was, so I had to create an entire scenario, really.
And then that ended up as a RID product called Bruticus, for people that are wondering afterwards.
Yeah. So that time was kind of picking up the pieces, dealing with Takara and Hasbro with their deal. Anything that was developed, we for the sake of financial, the contractual financial obligations, it was just much easier to put out stuff than to cancel it once you got to a certain model finish or tooling particularly. So I knew we would have to put all these things out. It did help that stopgap time with new or interesting product beyond RID, right?
And it also brings up something that I want to ask, when you have the relationships you have with the retailers, and they always want to have something new from your brand on the shelf. Is that also fall into it too, where it's like, well, we have nothing for let's say early 2001 to mid 2001. And it's after the holidays and stuff, but is Toys R Us expecting some new product, or how does that work? They'll always want newness, and the fortunate thing with a brand like Transformers is that they're going to accept that some interesting stuff's going to come in. If I was on a brand trying to extend maybe a Captain America movie line an extra year or something, that would become trickier, right? Without connected content. But the puzzle nature of Transformers, we could get away with it. There's always a person interested in those kind of vehicles or that kind of play. So I probably had more room. And I would imagine that has a lot to do with when we have sub imprints. When you have Beast Machines, and then you have Beast Machines Battle for the Spark. That also kind of gives it a little life for a little longer.
Absolutely. So they were probably developing. They had developed these back-end Beast Machines products. They were obviously speculating and worked on Cheetor and Starscream, because obviously Starscream coming back was going to be a big deal, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's probably why that model got done first, because people were excited about bringing that character back. Excited about taking a character we all internally knew as a cheetah and a fast character and changed a lot, but it was still a cheetah, into the next evolution, a fast vehicle. So that's probably why that model got made, was to show the modern character Cheetor in this new vernacular of Transtech vehicle design. That's likely, in my estimation, why those two models would have been the ones that got made. I don't know how much. I think there was maybe a little work done with the big bad guy, which people equate into the Armada tank.
The rumor was that there's a prototype kicking around. There's no images that I could find. Could be wrong. Of Optimus Prime, somewhere supposedly that, like, because it was Cheetor and Starscream were the deluxes that were prototypes, and then obviously I guess they wanted to. The way I see it, it's like it would have been 3 items that they would have brought to show off at a toy fair. Let's say,
sure,
like, hey, here's what we're doing.
You're probably right. I think I recall an Optimus model. I don't know if I've seen the model or photos of the model, but I do recall a model, and I recall a more elaborate Megatron model of the Spiderhead. That I don't know if that was the end of Beast Machine's product that got canceled, or
it was
the next evolution.
That was a Beast Machine's product, the Mega Head Megatron, with the spider legs under it. You're referring to?
This one was leader scale.
Oh, okay, interesting.
This one ate up basically Minicon sized Optimus and Cheetor figures.
Interesting. Okay.
I've seen a model on that one, but I don't know where that model was supposed to live. I guess probably at the end of Beast Machines. And it probably got canceled because they knew Beast Machines was not doing well and probably not going to get continued on some level. Internally, you kind of know when people are less excited about, it's a fashion industry. And so sometimes you can sense that, yeah, this Beast Wars thing is over. What's next?
No one's wearing it.
yeah. So this Beast Wars, Beast Machines era is kind of, it's time to bring new blood into it. You just start to sense that you might be able to keep selling it in. Turtles did this for a long time, but people over the time get less and less and less interested. So, and that's internally as well as externally. So that was also happening. And it's tough to talk to retailers over and over, year after year, about almost the same thing. Oh, we got new beasts or updated cheetahs this year. It's like, well, didn't you say that last year? Even if the designs are cool, the features are cool, it's still not necessarily going to bring people to the store and go, wow, I've never seen something like that before.
Unless it's selling gangbusters.
Yeah, and that's just the attitude those types of people have to have, and that's I just bring that up. I'm not complaining about them, but
makes sense.
So all that said is that's all for planning for success, right? We're making models, we're doing designs, we have the show that's going. It might not be operating on all cylinders, but we're gonna have to pull it out of the fire. We like what we've been doing, so we'll pull it out of the fire with the next series, and that's the mentality you have. I think as a creator, it's tough to recognize sometimes, what, we need to stop and start over. It just doesn't always make sense. So I want to unless you have more product questions at this point, I want to transition into like how we started to make a different choice.
Well, I guess we'll just cover like some of the characters that were planned to return were, this is based off of Draxhall art, prototypes, like pretty much everything that we've seen up to this point. Black Arachnia, Cheetor, Night Scream, Silverbolt, Rat Trap, Depth Charge would be returning. Of the Generation 1 characters returning, Optimus Prime, Shockwave, Starscream, Megatron. Now, this isn't implied if it's Beast Wars Megatron or Generation 1 Megatron returning. Some people lean more that it was the G1 Megatron. And then the new character was this Amorticon. That was this new character that was going to be of the large price point of the Ultra class with electronics. We have images of that and everything. We'll get into the rumors afterwards in relation to that character. But aside from that was pretty much it that we knew. We saw, again, a whole bunch of different sketches, everything that was just on the cutting room floor, and didn't really have much else. Obviously, Bakon and them would kind of go in a different direction using the idea. But when we're talking this era and what would have been, not what Fun Publication and Bakon would do later, that's completely unrelated. But in relation to this, that's all we really knew. There was, there was talk of like, oh, maybe Soundwave might be in it, and there was some sketch art, but nothing was ever confirmed. And just pretty much, it really looks like just, here's what we have an idea, but we're also in a transitionary kind of world, and we might as well get into that with what you're saying, because there's a new guy coming to town named Brian. Yeah. There's a whole lot of different things.
And remember what I said, they were still slow rolling the return of what was perceived as the G1 era. I don't even know if we used that term internally at the time, but going back to classic vehicles and that storyline a little bit. So you could see that they're slowly doing this drip by drip by drip.
Again, 2000 into 2001, think about what's going to be coming out within the next 2 years in alternators and Armada. And so just to give that perspective. And, of course, the reissues, too. Can't forget those. G1 reissues.
That's right. So how to start with this? So this is what's happening. This is what's going on. In mid 2000, Brian Goldner gets elevated from being president of Tiger Electronics to being in charge of, I believe, Kenner. I don't know if he was a president at that point, but some sort of creative director for sure, overseeing.
It was president of Tiger. He came from Bandai, president of Tiger, and then he was. I think it was a creative marketing director, something like that. On a lower level first. Yeah,
they brought him in gingerly, even though everybody knew, he was fast tracked, and knew his reputation as a good one from developing stuff with the Japanese. So he comes in and evaluates all of Hasbro's brands and really sees the potential in Tonka, Nerf, My Little Pony, Littlest Pet Shop, Transformers, to some degree G.I. Joe, but G.I. Joe really never had front footing. That was more always a lead for the entertainment over toy. But the other brands, really, how do we start leveraging our internal brands? And that was a drumbeat throughout the early 2000s. And he looked at where they were from a sales standpoint with Beast Machines. He looked at a entertainment viability standpoint. If you think of that show, it was still being aired on odd channels at odd times. It was syndicated. It wasn't in Hasbro's control per se. So it wasn't necessarily shining a big light on the brand, even though it was great to have a cutting edge TV show, don't get me wrong,
especially at that time.
Yeah, but if it started to not be pointing in the direction that he wanted to get to, which was very much getting back to basics, getting back to some sort of classic attitude of cars versus cars, Autobots versus Decepticon, a war that started on Cybertron that's now on Earth. Kind of broad brush strokes of what the brand is, not getting into granular stuff like let's bring back Optimus and Megatron and they have to be a red truck. That really wasn't spelled out. But what was obvious quick as so this is where I start to come in. So midsummer he comes in, early October or late September I'm to believe now, is when we were told that we were moving to Rhode Island. So
what year was this? Sorry.
This was 2000. 2000.
Okay.
Yeah. So by October, late October for sure, early November, I knew I was taking over Transformers because the couple of guys that previously ran it were staying in Cincinnati. They were not taking the offer to move to Rhode Island. So because of my experience with Lucasfilm and Warner Brothers and DC and all these different entities that I had interacted with, I put myself up, and I was kind of senior at that time. I had good 6 years in, looking for something meaty to get into and own. So I said, hey, I'd love to take over Transformers. And so that's how I start being engaged late 2000s or 2000, being part of this story, because I was then given so Brian made the decision at some point in the fall that we were not going to continue with what was Beast Machine's sequel, which Transtech, that we were going to go in this completely different direction of co-development with Takara, and we were going to co-develop a new show getting back to these basics. And in order to do that, we needed to jump on that right away. And in order to get to have some sort of next step, since we're going to can the development of the sequel to Beast Machines, we're going to bring in this show that's already developed, that already has product, RID, car robots, and that will be our stopgap while we develop what will become Armada. And that basically shows that Transtech, no matter how cool it might have been, or its sequel, or the designs, or the work done, models made, this happens in toys a lot, it becomes the wrong answer to the question of how do we drive business, how do we get back to stuff people understand, what is the future of this brand. All of those things were the wrong, Transtech presented the wrong answer. They were not forms kids could just go, oh, that's a something, They weren't characters that totally ignited all the fans that we were hoping to get. Weren't using the iconography from the classic lore. Something in the translation of from Beast Wars to Beast Machines lost some of the magic Beast Wars did have, no doubt. That should be part of this story too. Beast Wars was gangbusters. It was a breakthrough series.
Oh, yeah.
Sold a lot of toys. Those characterizations were great. We sold the same product for 2 years on shelf because the characterizations were so good in that show. So there was a degree of slippage from whatever that was, from an excitement level, to whatever we got to with Beast Machines. The translations no longer worked. So it just naturally kind of died, like a lot of shows and toys and brands do. It's just rare, like you started this, that it happened in Transformers. Usually there's not a lot of canceled Transformer series.
Yeah, well, and especially too, the way that I always saw it from a fan perspective was, I felt that as the Beast era, because that's how you kind of look at it. If you looked at it as like you have Beast Wars, Beast Machines, and Transtech, if you look at visually how it was evolving, it kind of got muddy along the way. Where at first, it's as if you took, like, here's what Cheetor is, and you put it in a blender, and you blend it a little bit, and that's kind of what the Transmetal did, and then you blend it a little more, and that's kind of what the Transmetal 2 was, and then you blend it a little more, and that's what the Beast Machines design is, and then you kept blending it, and then you ended up with what those designs were in the end.
Yeah, and
Transtech,
I think as a designer, you get to a point where you're so far from the original that you've kind of messed it up.
Well, like you said, the iconography.
And it's very easy to go, I love cheetahs. And, that's a cool thing. Oh, it turns into a robot? Oh, even cooler. And then by the time, like you said, you go down the lines, Transmetals 2 and stuff, you have to be a fan to have followed that plotting. And maybe you're not going to get those original people back, right? Because it no longer looks like a cheetah. And
it lost its way along the way. And that's why when you look at what then became Armada, it's like you look at, if you almost look at, if you took Armada and its lineup of characters, and then you took Transtech and its lineup of characters, and you would have said, these two would have both debuted at the same time. Which one do you... Because that's literally what it would have been, if you think about it. which one do you think would have resonated more with the mainstream audience? You know, the one that had the very clear cut, it's a red truck that turns into a G1 Optimus Prime facsimile, you know, this yellow car that turns into, I guess, like a hot rod / Bumblebee facsimile, or this amalgamation of cheetah meets car, or this amalgamation of, you know, truck
meets
monkey
high-end design.
It's very stylistic.
Yep.
And not to mention, because sometimes you have to remember what's happening around us at that exact same time. Pokemon just took over the world. Anime just all of a sudden got pushed to the front. Toonami is doing their anime block. Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, and we're going more American stylized mecha abstract art, as opposed to clean cell animation anime that now the mainstream audience has started to consume. Yep. So it's all, you also have to remember what's going on around that time too. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
I'm sure there's other factors at foot. I'm sure Mainframe was getting more and more expensive and or busy with other projects. So that was going to...
Mattel was being involved with them around that time too, yeah.
So that's going to be a factor, partner with Takara. We can get leverage in Japan with their animation. Okay, let's look at that. So it all, from a business standpoint, and like you said, Brian Goldner had worked with Bandai, so he understood what that partnership could yield when we started, once we got it going, which was basically my career on Transformers. Yeah. So Transtech just, got put off to the side. It was because of this research and this perception internally. It was something that I easily avoided. I wasn't going to be bringing up, hey, let's put out this model in Universe, or, I was not, I got to be honest, I was not defending any Beast Machines or Transtech stuff, and I really, even some people internally had a bad feeling about Beast Wars, which me and my boss thought was silly because Beast Wars did really well. Mm-hmm. But, not invented here mentality with some people. So, even bringing beasts back at times kind of skeeved people out. Because it was all painted internally as like, oh, those were the olden times. We've moved on. Which was funny because I lived through those olden times. I was there. So that's kind of what happened, and it just got moved on, and we never looked back. Those models are rest at Takara. And then we have this Draxel art. And that's a cool term. I think Transtech resonates because of the cool name, Transtech. Whatever happened to Transtech?
Yeah, and it's also just like, it's the big what if, like this alternate world where we got that instead of car robots buying us time as robots in disguise, and here's this high stylized mainframe CG series that was playing on Fox Kids. Imagine if that was the case, and these toys that had this translucent plastic with glowing kind of gimmick to it, like the alternate continuity where we have Transtech as a brand and what would have been. I think that's what's so intriguing to fans, because there never really has ever been something like that in Transformers since, where there was this heavily developed idea, prototypes and art and a show that was going to be with it from a company that had a very good track record of putting out very, well-written fiction for the Transformer brand. You could say what you want about Beast Machines, but it was, well-written, even if you weren't a fan of the designs. But
Sure.
It's something, darker, I guess is probably the easy used word to say. But it's something where I think people would always love to imagine what would have been like the next step of that, in the same sense that like you look at like Batman, and then how the Batman animated series, you have Batman animated series, then New Adventures of Batman, and then it slowly grew into what would be the Justice League stuff, which so many people love, and Justice League Unlimited, where it's kind of like people almost imagine what would have been the next step of that Beast Wars, Beast Machines, and then Transtech, that trilogy that would have been, Who knows?
and I mean, that is a thing in toys that does happen on every brand, that eventually you get usually to wave 3, and the line is canceled, but you've developed wave 4 and maybe wave 5 ideas. That's very common. And it, because of the weirdness of two companies working together, it just doesn't happen on Transformers a lot. Now, I could show you a stack of 1,000 pieces of paper of the ideas that Takara and Hasbro have developed together that have not gone to model stage. Because that's an endless effort. I mean, we have ideas. I mean, it's amazing. Anyway, but the idea that models were made, stories were developed, characters were chosen, usually isn't how it goes with Transformers.
And Big Bad Toy Store having a wave assortment kind of plan. It's like it's clearly.
But other toy lines do. I mean, you plan for success, and then one day the boss comes in and says, "Well, management made a decision. We're killing this, or we're not going to sign up for the Batman license when it renews. So we're going to redeploy these type." So it happens all the time. It's just rare that this much content would have been developed and then released into the wild for us to have these discussions, particularly then with something Japanese connected.
And then, of course, afterwards, the choices would be made. Now, we might as well just cover it briefly. Around that time also, you had Web Divers, which was a Japanese series from Takara that had transforming robots with, I guess what started that rumor was because there's a car that transforms into a cheetah, like a cheetah humanoid, if you will.
Sure.
And that kind of created all kinds of rumors among the fandom. Oh, is this like, some Transtech designs, or is this going to be Transtech, or, is that giant train, is that going to be the Optimus character? And, laid to rest that rumor that Web Divers had nothing to do with Transtech and vice versa, pretty much.
Yeah,
so we're going to cover some rumors.
Yeah, Web Diver was always its own thing. We at Hasbro evaluated to bring it over as its own thing, as a whole wave kind of thing, not necessarily
under the Transformer brand or as its own thing.
Maybe under the Transformers brand. Okay. Maybe its own thing, but it wouldn't have been connected to Armada. Yeah, basically, and that. We were in those discussions, and I even think back that I'm not sure we would have been able to do that because of the way the negotiated deals were with Japanese television. They get a part of it, they own part of it, whereas the Hasbro Takara stuff, nobody owned any part of it unless Takara gave them parts of their deal. The Web Diver thing, we would have had to then join their deal, which then would have cost a lot more.
I've heard that that's part of the reason why the Brave stuff never happened was because Sunrise Entertainment, which was the people who were doing the show, had a huge stake in it.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah. So that was basically a catered project for Sunrise that they employed Takara to basically execute for their efforts. So they created a deal together to make that happen, and that's why Hasbro definitely didn't have access to any of those tools and models, because Takara didn't even control those tools and models per se. They were in a partnership with another company to make that product. So don't think of that as Transformers product in a way.
To kind of make it relatable for people, it's kind of like if today, even though Hasbro has the tooling for some old Batman stuff, they couldn't put it out without the license.
Exactly. Even if it was the coolest.
We're going to release that old Batman Returns mold we did, 25 years ago, but they don't have the Batman license, so they can't do that. Even though they made it, they have the tooling and everything. So yeah, that's how it kind of makes sense.
And the Web Diver we looked at, the technology for plug and play stuff was fading fast at retail. And that was an expensive, elaborate plug and play where the games of Web Diver, unfortunately, were not technologically that exciting. They were very basic, shoot games, dodge games.
And it wasn't very successful in Japan. So
to
bring something that wasn't successful in Japan and then bring it over here and hoping, I guess you're going to speed racer it, as I call it, where it wasn't successful there, but somehow it found footing here. That's not always the case.
Yeah, so they were hopeful that maybe they could recoup some of the investment and stuff by Hasbro picking it up and looking at it, but we were pushing so much towards what would become Armada to be a big statement at retail that we couldn't also take time and effort to pitch in something, like you said, that wasn't probably an ideal gaming system or transforming play toys. So it just never made sense for us to bring in Web Diver. Although I enjoyed it, I had a lot of fun looking at what they were doing. I had a giant, I had a giant poster calendar of Web Diver for years. That
I'm staring at them right now. The figures, they're fun little figures.
Yeah,
but,
and I'm partial. In my own weird design world, a purple and green and gold train.
It's kind of cool.
Is kind of cool. Yeah, it's ridiculous, and that's what I believe toys should be, ridiculous. So things like Web Diver are great. I wish the game internally was cooler, and I wish the transformation was more organically intuitive, versus a little more cumbersome than it should be for the age target.
Some other rumors we have here. So Draxel Jump afterwards would go on to work on another line called Marvel Megamorphs. They would be one of the designers for Marvel Megamorph. The rumor is, and I'm telling you, I look at these images and I don't see what they see, but the rumor is that they use the designs for Immorticon and Starscream for their Hulk and Iron Man design. I'm looking at them both side by side right now, the prototypes of Starscream and the Iron Man and the Immorticon designs of Hulk. I don't see what they see. Have you heard anything of this? If this is valid or not?
I mean, you're dealing with the same type of designer, so there's going to be design,
similar beats.
You're going to see design language there, and maybe sometimes, hey, I kind of did this already. I'll leverage some of the work I did previous, but I don't think anyone was tactically going, oh, let's copy this. Just same hands are going to give you a similar outcome.
Well, especially like when a tank. How many times could you transform a tank, and it's sooner or later you're going to have something that's going to look similar. Yeah. So it's and the same thing with the Iron Man one. I don't see it with the jet at all, but that's their claim. Also, just to cover, Draxel
and then so Draxel, just Ken, they did such good work, clean work, inventive work, that they were used across a lot of brands at Hasbro, and just like Marcelo and Emiliano and Ken Christensen and these different names you guys have met and heard of at shows and whatever. We would rely on these guys to do heavy lifting on a lot of different concepts. So, Draxel would naturally find his way across a lot of different things.
It says here that he actually did a Demolisher for Armada. He helped with the designs on that one. That's what I'm reading here. I didn't know that one at all. I don't know about that. He might have done a sketch. Yeah, maybe. Maybe an early, because Demolisher had a lot of different ideas.
Those images that you sent me earlier, there's a storyboard image in there.
Yeah.
That is the first Armada image. That's one robot hitting another robot, and the sweat of the robot getting hit are the minicons flying off of him and then redirecting towards the first robot. So he did my first kind of pitch image. That's how I sold it in.
So that image is not that's not a Transtech image. That's an Armada.
Yeah, no, that's an Armada image. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep. Well, there you go. That one we'll put it up on the screen so people know that that's not associated with it. Another rumor also was that certain designs in Transformers Armada were evolutionary designs from stuff that wasn't done in Transtech. Some people always say Armada Megatron. Again, I don't see it, but I mean at the same time, there's only so many ways you could transform an H tank. So it's like,
yeah, I know. For my part, I didn't pull any of that stuff out and reference it. But that doesn't mean that the model makers or designers at Takara didn't want to reuse work that was perfectly valid and unused, right? So it could have been in the mix. I just can't confirm that because I didn't organically.
You weren't in their mind at the time, yeah.
Yeah, but as a creative person, if I had a really cool thing I already figured out and it didn't go anywhere, and now we're figuring out another similar thing, yeah, I'd like to pull that out and use it as my underlay. Sure. So I can see how that could happen, but I can't guarantee that's how it happened.
And last thing that I want to cover here, because so later on we would get, of course, Transtech related stuff from Fun Publication. We get homages to Transtech stuff here and there, like Cheetor, which was used actually from Blur, from our animated, kind of had a similar look to what his Transtech design was with the wheel legs and everything. So, you know, they're and again, that's probably more of a Derek Wyatt thing and throwing back to Transformer history and him being a fan. But one of the rumors here also was that you guys were involved with Fun Publication and what was used through Fun Publication. And I actually have confirmed this afterwards with Jesse because I've talked with him, but that all the ideas that were done with Fun Publication are not related to what Hasbro had initially planned with the transforming transcendence and, you know, explaining what Transtech was and all of that. I assume you guys weren't in. Yeah.
From what again, I was sitting next to these guys developing this stuff in early 2000 and stuff, and then I inherited the pile of stuff after it was kind of canceled as the new creative dude, and like, well, here we have all this stuff just so you know what it was.
Yeah, that's what I've.
So I don't really know the granular details of how to answer that one.
Yeah, I think it's just more it's hearsay. There's a lot of, that's why I always like to bring these up, is because there's always it's a hearsay among the fans that then snowballs into what people put on certain websites as fact, and that's why it's always I like to address them. Same thing like the mention of Scavenger, the Armada Scavenger, and how same thing his early designs are found in Transtech stuff, and it's like, you know, it's, okay. You know, is that the case? You know, maybe it's only superficial at best, you know, coincidence. So
yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, again, I wasn't looking at that stuff trying to bring it forward is all I remember. So if any of it is connective tissue, it all happened on the Takara side for their ease of turning it into Armada items.
Well, it does beg the question, outside of those two prototypes that we have and possibly the third one with Optimus Prime, how involved was Takara with the designs of those characters? Because we have Draxall Jump doing those sketches and everything, but
so this would have been this would have been before co-development, so they would have been given drawings and would have executed models off those drawings.
But considering how we have
and
only
would have
three
been
models,
and would have been told to keep to a certain price structure and feature complement. So hey, we want one projectile and a light up feature.
I'm just trying to get in their head. So Draxall's drawings get sent to them, and we only have three models. How much of that really was executed ultimately in the end, or it was in the minds of the individuals that did it, whoever it was at the time? You know, that's why, because I'm trying to figure, like, okay, if they execute an Armada Scavenger, did they even get to see those Scavenger sketches to then have that inspiration later on? Like, did those two dots never get connected anyways?
Probably not. I mean, only on the Japanese side, if at all.
That's why I'm trying to like debunk that rumor, because it's like I don't even think they got that stuff.
And I think, like I said, I think the models that got made were probably for also going to dub as some sort of sell-in models.
That's why I figured, like a Toy Fair thing.
Yeah, some sort of, or like what we'd often have closed door meetings with Toys R Us. They'd come in, well, hey, let's show you what we're planning for next year. Yeah. You know, kind of behind the scenes stuff. So sometimes models would get fast tracked that way, and or hey, this is the future direction, where you don't have to have the whole line figured out. But Transformers is always a different animal too. I would like to say, because we didn't follow any of the Hasbro model shop protocols. Our models weren't made in Rhode Island. They were made out of different materials than what they usually use for the models in Rhode Island. They were more delicate and complex than anything else, other than maybe some for real friends kind of materials. Because those were robots, I'll give them that. So, and they weren't sculpted in Rhode Island. They weren't sculpted with wax. They were made out of styrene cut in Tokyo. So the flow of the models was very weird with Transformers. So sometimes they would have to have models made way in advance, or could only get one or two made, because the way Takara did it, they kind of did one and then the other and then the other and then the other. It's not like Hasbro would work on 6 guys at the same time, 6 Star Wars figures, going to 6 different sculptors in some cases. Takara does not work that way. So when we would need different models for sales meetings or presentations or whatever, sometimes we'd pick a couple, and maybe that's the case with this Transtech models, where these will be our representatives to sell this concept in, with art and some other stuff. The Drexel art was probably used for that as well. Showy, cool, bright, colorful pictures. To let people know what's coming. Because we very rarely had a full line of Takara stuff at Toy Fair and things like that, without a lot of planning.
Well, that was another thing too that I kind of wanted to address is there has been a lot of stuff that was pitched around and art and everything, and there was one, forget where I saw it, but I remember there was one that they were showing like a Transtech Megatron, and the placeholders for the images and stuff were like stuff from Gundam. Like it was clearly Gundam stuff, Yeah,
that could have been internal presentation boards where we're trying to just convey our intent, because we're not at the point to show what we're actually doing.
Okay. Yeah, because I was like, ooh, that's kind of ballsy,
Well, I mean, yeah, back then that was one thing. Nowadays, you literally can get sued and whatnot for that. So it's not even.
Okay, I'll put it up on the screen, show what I'm talking about. I think it was from Gundam 0083 at the time, one of their big mechas. But man, oh man, like it's always interesting. And that's why it was a topic that I figured we would bring up sooner or later, and it was requested by the fans too, because it's just something where, there's not so much meat on the bone to chew on here. But what there is, we are going to just kind of put all in one place, and then you guys could take from that and understand a little better, because it's something, it's something that I imagine, especially with the current people behind Hasbro right now, with Mark and Evan and all those guys, where I could see them maybe one day going like, you know what, we've done everything at this point. Let's finally do that monkey truck Transtech design, Well, I've seen it with Star Wars. They do that with Star Wars. They're like, hey, let's do a Luke Starkiller figure, and they've done it, so.
Yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I would say, it feels like a deep cut to me. You would have had to have been in that era at the time, still in it. There wasn't enough interesting stuff put out that people have, told me repeatedly over the years, I got to get that Starscream. I got to get that Starscream. So I don't know. I think it was just another interesting creative data point to use if I was Mark or anybody else.
It's something,
but I don't think there's a celebration of anybody's like, hey, they finally did it. They finally made Race Car Cheetor,
It's something where the way I see it is they have done every Optimus a million times over, and at least it would be something refreshing. And to the people who don't know, it's another Optimus. A very weird-looking one, but it's another Optimus. And to the ones who do know, that's the 0.3% that are celebrating. And probably even that number's exaggerated. But the point is, it's me and 3 other guys. It's something that I could see that could be a direction. Because again, through Derek Wyatt, we kind of got that Cheetor indirectly, through the blur mold. So it's something that I could see them maybe at one time. They might just throw the bone there. But in the same way that, we don't see much Beast Machines product celebrated today, because that was something that was considered a negative. So if Beast Machines isn't celebrated that much, I can't imagine, something that didn't happen at all being celebrated too much either.
Yeah, so, it's tough. And then even internally, you have to have an advocate or a calling, an anniversary, a reissue opportunity, something. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, they haven't even got to celebrating, Cheetor and Rhinox and Rat Trap quite enough yet. So
when you think about it, anniversary just passed for Beast Machines, no celebration. So
yeah, and so I think we probably are pretty. That's where I think, hey, if you like these designs, you could sneak them in, but I don't think anyone's going to be celebrating the fact that you snuck them in. No one's waiting, for that anniversary or whatever. But they are interesting designs to leverage.
Beast Machine's 20th anniversary, nothing.
I believe they're all assets, right? I've said this, and like any piece of the content is an asset to be deployed at the right time for the right purpose. So Transtech designs, they are pretty cool. I think time will tell whether or not we find the right time and purpose.
I think you summed it up at the beginning. Why it didn't happen in the end was just timing more than anything else. It wasn't the right answer, like you said, for the right question at the right time. Yeah,
because let's paint another scenario. I think the fans of this stuff deserve this too. Like, okay, Beast Machines comes out, it doesn't do quite enough. The toys are okay. We're going to put out this fourth season. Brian Goldner never comes. Let's say it that way. He never comes to Cincinnati, or he never institutes, the core brand philosophy on Transformers. So it would have been a fourth season. Let's assume Mainframe. Mainframe is a little maybe busier at this time, so maybe it's not quite even the same partnership that Beast Machines was. Takara is still not a partner in the show and or the product, so they're just going to be executional. Whatever you send us, we'll make for you. Here's the deal. That show would have come out. It would have been internally, people would have been excited because we're getting back to vehicles. But I think the audience would have been like, well, not quite yet. And so I think you would have got a similar response overall to
I could definitely
Transtech as Beast Machines, and we would have been left with then a really hard decision. It would have been like, oh no, we've crashed the plane into the mountain, just like in 1988 or whatever, and
around that time.
And now we've spoiled the beasts. Now what do we do?
Well,
because they would have perceived the machines as not working either.
I remember the reactions initially. Because those images were out even back then. I would have to say around 2001, 2002, especially that Optimus one. That one really got around. And I remember even back then people being kind of because there's the old joke with Transformers, truck not monkey, truck monkey.
Yeah.
And this was literally a truck monkey. It literally was. Yes. It had that silhouette of, it looks like a monkey kind of in robot mode, but then it turned into a truck, and it's, but this is supposed to be Optimus Prime. So it's something where, who knows how it would have been overall received if the hardcore fandom was kind of going like, that's kind of funky looking, Yeah. But I think to be fair, I think all fans kind of always jump the gun with their opinions initially when it comes to designs. Animated too got kind of chewed apart initially when it first was shown, and then people liked it. But I think
I have long and short versions of that, but I think exposure over time softens all attitudes.
Of course.
Unless the core concept is bogus from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I will make the case for various protectors, or there's things along the way that just don't honor the brand in its core essence, I would say. But if you can avoid that, you can do a lot of things.
And pretty much where we go from here afterwards is, of course, the decision was made. We're not going to Transtech. We're going to put car robots, repackage it, rebrand it, call it Robots in Disguise here in America. That'll be played on Fox through Saban and everything. They're going to dub it. It's going to buy us some time while we begin Project Armada. If you want to watch, that was one of our first segments. You can learn about the creation of Transformers Armada here on the podcast. We have two parts for that one and a whole bunch of other Armada segments. You can learn how that was created, but that's kind of like the next step in that if you want to
This one dovetails right into those.
Yeah, chronologically, that's probably the next segment of the pod you'd want to go listen to. So we come off of that into that, but that's pretty much it. I would imagine.
Do you think we'll ever do a car robots one? I don't know. I
I could the thing with that is I could see us talking about it. The thing is a lot of it is very Japanese created.
It's Japanese created. I mean, I could tell you right now, I had to deal with the reissues.
Yeah,
package stuff, adaptions, new sound effects, new names, new sigils, stuff like that.
So then it's something like, fans, let us know in the comments. PM
might be a short one.
Let us message us. Like, let us know. Would that be something that would interest you? Is there enough interest for car robots going into robots in disguise and that kind of process and everything? Because it is a unique also kind of brand in Transformers compared to everything we've had before and since. In that it was this brand that was brought over to kind of just buy time, and it was a lot of repackaging, and it was a mix of brand new designs, repackaging of old toys, and then on top of it all, hey, all these Beast Machine stuff that never got released, we're gonna somehow find a place for them here in the Supreme Optimus Primal, the Head Megatron, the Cerberus, like we just mentioned. And I know I'm forgetting stuff, so it felt like, I almost felt like G2 in a sense, but not really. I don't want to compare the two. But.
Yeah, and then I brought what did we add? A bunch of the micro or what do we call those? The
there's even those. True. You brought the Japanese Micromasters as filler also at one point. Yeah,
I mean, we added all kinds of stuff in there.
No, excuse me, the Spy Changers. Sorry,
Spy Changers. That's what it was.
Yeah, like there's a lot of like those were unreleased designs. It's just it's weird. It's weird. So anything else you want to cover on this before we close off on Transformers Transtech and what would have been?
I don't think too much. I'm hoping to see if I can't get some other photos from some other sources to see if we can't add something special to this one. We'll see.
Perfect. Anyways, guys, thanks again for listening. This is the Toy Armada with Aaron Archer. Thanks again for coming, Aaron, and talking about the robots in disguise.
Thank you. You want to talk about the live every Friday, 10 o'clock?
Yeah, might as well. So Aaron now, in case you guys haven't caught, usually every Friday, Aaron is going to be doing a live stream where you guys could come in and super chat some questions, ask some questions about the Transformer brand and everything. Give Aaron a little support. Let him know that you love what he's doing here. And so that's Friday, usually 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I would imagine. That's
10 o'clock. Usually
10 o'clock. Excuse me. 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So Friday, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard. Go check him out. If you miss any past of those live segments, click on the live tab. I think we already have, as of this recording, about 4 of them that you could check out, and you could see how how that goes about. And be sure to tune into those and ask Aaron some questions and super chat and support that too. And check it out. And be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We just learned recently that 50%, is it? You told me 50% of our listeners are unsubscribed. They're not even subscribers. They're just popping in and listening and enjoying. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. It helps the algorithms. It helps everything.
If you've listened to this far, please subscribe.
Yeah. So if you went the whole run and you still haven't hit the subscribe button, what are you doing, bro? Yeah, come on. So hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like. Be sure to comment. It helps the algorithms. Helps people put that out there and let people know. Also, share the segments. If you like what you heard, go on your local Transformer message groups or Facebook or whatever. If anyone still does MySpace, whatever. Just share it out there. Let people know you like what you hear. And as always, I'm Protoman. This is Aaron Archer, and this was the Toy Armada with Aaron Archer. We were talking Transtech.